Woo, the Golden Stallion, the Man of Tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R radio star, the best in the world, is here for you, baby. And got your Star Wars update for the month of January. Now, I'll admit, I wish that I could have done this like next week, because next week, really the piece of content, other than the Rebels trailer, which we're going to talk about in a minute, the piece of content that I was waiting to read this whole month isn't coming out till Wednesday. But then you got your Wednesday Q&A, and I don't want to, I usually try not to do two pieces of content in one day if I can help it. So yeah, the DJ comic we will review next month in February, which again, we will, that'll be later on. The Star Wars update will be later on in the month, probably the third, maybe fourth week, or probably the third week of the month, or fourth week. February is a shorter month. Anyway, it'll be closer to the end, because we found out that with the new Rebels trailer that I mentioned, there's going to be, Rebels will start on February 19th. And I want to review, I think they said the episodes are going to be back to back, and it's just going to go from like February 19th to like March 5th. So we've only got a few episodes, even though there's going to be like 2 a night, apparently. That's what I thought I understood they were saying. But whatever, we don't have a whole lot of Rebels left. And boy. So, and I might have a nice surprise for next month's Star Wars update that I don't know if I'm going to announce yet, but we'll see how everything shapes up. It'll be a good time either way. You know that. I deliver the goods all the time. So, okay, let's get right into this. Got a few things we'll talk about this month, but let's talk about the Rebels trailer. This is definitely the biggest thing to happen for Star Wars this month, aside from obviously The Last Jedi still, doing its thing. So Rebels, let's talk about the trailer in the abstract. Rebels has like, I don't know how they do this. They have just some of the best trailers for anything that I've ever seen. I mean, they make this show. I love Rebels. I've loved Star Wars Rebels. I am genuinely sad to see it go. It's had some really great moments, especially in season 4. And, bringing back Thrawn, I couldn't be happier. I am so glad that's a thing. Even though I keep hearing people saying they're not impressed with Thrawn. I don't know. I've enjoyed who he is and what they've done with him so far. Yeah, it's not like full stride, but then, maybe it'll be a while before we actually see what that full on looks like. But for what he is, and for being in Rebels, like I think it works. He's getting much more playtime than just about airtime, as it were, than just about any other villain. Anyway, I really love Rebels. I love what it's done. But yeah, the trailers can make the show seem way more serious and dark than it ever really seems to be. I mean, it builds up a certain hype that Rebels doesn't, in my opinion, Rebels doesn't exactly deliver on every time. Not that what Rebels does is bad, far from it. In fact, the exact opposite. It's just not, it never seems to match the tone of these amazing trailers that we get. In fact, the one thing, so at the end of season 2, when you get not Mortis, what is that, Moraband that they go to with Maul, and where where Ahsoka takes on Vader and everything. That episode delivered on being dark, on being serious, on being heavy, on almost making you cry. But that's kind of the only one where I felt like that the tone of the trailers for this show totally lived up to it. But it's just, it's a 2-parter, but it's one episode that did that, So again, but that's not to say that Rebels has been bad, not at all. Rebels has also kind of become a sense of closure for Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which of course was also spearheaded by Dave Filoni, who is, the brains behind Star Wars Rebels. And that was maybe the one thing out of this whole trailer, whatever, Kanan cutting his hair, seeing Emperor Palpatine, and we do now know that absolutely is Emperor Palpatine. And I think Ian McDiarmid is doing the voice. I don't even know if it's my man crush Sam Witwer. But anyway, all that's cool. But the thing that really that I was like, was that you see the there's like that not a tapestry, but there's the artwork on a rock face. Okay. That is very clearly from the Mortis trilogy, where it shows the father, the son, and the daughter from Mortis, who they are the Force wielders, which are this race or these creatures, depending on which interpretation you're going to go with. That, or like some outlets were even calling it the Mortis gods. They were never called that in the actual Mortis trilogy. But these Force wielders are these really powerful, like they kind of talk about bringing balance to the Force. Like the Force really hinges on this race. And last I knew, it was an actual race, and they were just called Force wielders. So this is in reference to, was it season 4, I think, of Clone Wars, where there was the Mortis trilogy, which is a very, it's some of the most important Star Wars to watch. Okay. But it is a very weird piece of Star Wars. It's 3 episodes of Clone Wars, and it's notable for a few reasons. One of them being one of my favorite Star Wars characters, that being Qui-Gon Jinn, kind of makes a comeback in it, and they even got Liam Neeson to do the voice. Thank you, Liam. But it's a storyline that you think it's weird, and you think, wow, was Filoni, like, what was he? Was he hitting up some crack or something? Like what was going on for him? George Lucas was very much behind the Mortis trilogy, and so George Lucas was trying to say something about the Force. I think those episodes were meant to be very deep and metaphorical, and I've read some interesting analyses of those episodes. I watched that trilogy over and over again, more than any other episodes of the Clone Wars, really, because I'm really trying to understand what the fuck is being said. Okay, there's other episodes, like in season 6, or what is it called, the Lost Missions or something. They don't officially call it season 6 of the Clone Wars. Those are the episodes that got released on Netflix after Disney bought out Lucasfilm. There's episodes in that where suddenly there's like the Force kind of gets re-explained as having multiple parts to it, not light side and dark side, but like the living Force and like the cosmic Force, whatever. Those are interesting episodes to watch too, the ones with Yoda in season 6 or the Lost Missions. But the Mortis trilogy, like I do every once in a while, I'll watch that, and it has its moments that are really cool, that Anakin goes through and whatever else. And there's a lot there, a lot of symbolism. It's interesting stuff. And so if we can get any kind of closure in that, like there's that owl creature that you see in the trailer for the second part of season 4 of trailer for Rebels. That looks like the daughter, like it has her hair color, it has all her colorings and everything. So, that's a pretty safe bet. But if we can get some closure on what the fuck the whole Mortis trilogy meant, great. Please, let's do that. Okay. In fact, not that I want to get in predictions, because we've talked about this, that getting into Star Wars predictions is kind of hairy territory. You don't really, they'll just throw curveballs on you. And they are obviously making up a lot of shit as they go along. Not that Dave Filoni's as bad about that as some of the filmmakers are, but there's a chance that, like, Palpatine, yeah, that's Palpatine, but that might just be like, if the Mortis gods or the Force wielders are in season 4 of Rebels here, this latter part, that might just be the son, who is like this embodiment of the dark side, even though he's dead, but then you thought the daughter was dead too, and so was the father. That just might be an embodiment of the son, and playing as the Emperor. I don't know. And I'm not really making a prediction. I'm just those are the thoughts that crossed my mind, when I watched it. So, overall, this looked great. Of course, we don't know, with Rebels coming to a close, we don't know who's going to survive all of this. A lot of people have predicted that Kanan's going to die. I don't know. Hera, we know, will survive all of this, Hera is... Boy, that character, she's becoming kind of a big deal. She has been for a while, but like, especially with a lot of the Forces of Destiny, because now Forces of Destiny it's not just little YouTube animated shorts that they're putting up now that are canon in Star Wars. Now they're full on comic books, audiobooks, and everything. And I've actually, throughout January, there were quite a few of the comic books. I guess I'll just give a quick review here, but I thought they were great, and Hera's in a lot of them. And she's interacting with Princess Leia. They're on Hoth, at Echo Base and everything, riding Tauntauns, and you have Hera on a Tauntaun. Which is great, because she was one of my favorite characters in the show, and I thought that for, like, especially like in season 2, she was kind of getting the short shrift. It's like, Well, you have this badass woman who is like Han Solo, but in some ways like way cooler, way more serious, and actually has, a lot more principles. Not that I mind that Han Solo doesn't have those right away, but yeah, like it's a great character, and you weren't doing enough with her, and now she's really like Dr. Aphra. She is becoming this creation that is like weaving her way into so much of Star Wars, and I think it's great. I really love that. So we know she'll survive. That's about the only thing that we can say for certain of what the hell is going to happen in the second half of season 4. I hope that, if you're going to show in the trailer, you're going to show the Force wielders from Mortis. I hope you're planning on doing something with that, and it's not just some bullshit that you're laying out there. Okay, it's not just some fancy, drawings on a wall that that's there to just like tease us or something. In the trailer, you do see more of the Bendu, which I hope we get some closure on what the fuck the Bendu was, because I think that was something that was a tease that has yet to really be paid. You experience the character to some degree, but you don't get a whole lot. Once again, I think that, and I've said this before, and I'm not the only one. Yeah, clearly Lucasfilm/Disney is making really long plays here. At least that's the hope. Not just long plays. Yeah, they have plans for movies going way out, for the next 10 years. But long plays as in that a lot of the foundation that they've been laying in a lot, like say Rebels or in the comic books or in the books, eventually is going to have some kind of major payoff. Like the Bendu maybe we'll experience, say, in a live action TV show or something like that. I hope that that's what happens. Okay. And let me kind of explain why I think that might, because honestly right now it might as well happen. And the reason I say that, okay, right, real quick. Star Wars Rebels season 4, second half, the trailer for it. I thought the trailer was great. I am looking forward to it. I'm sure the second half of season 4 is going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. We'll be reviewing parts of it in February Star Wars update, and then of course in March's Star Wars update. Okay, so there's that. Now, here's something that's been going on, and we've got some other stuff we're going to review here in a second, some which might surprise you. But here's what. Since The Last Jedi, throughout January, there's been a ton of Star Wars news. The bulk of that Star Wars news that has come out, okay, minus the adding on, and I'm not going to get into these now, I might save this for next month, okay, minus the apparent add-on of various scenes like Han Solo's funeral and others into the novelization of The Last Jedi, blah, 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 okay, that's kind of big news. There's the synopsis that came out for the Han Solo movie, whatever. There's nothing really to talk about there. The Han Solo movie, yep, May 25th, it's coming out. Okay. Minus any of that kind of news, the bulk of the Star Wars news, which there has been a lot, has been all about Rian Johnson or someone else involved with The Last Jedi explaining parts of the film. Now, you can say that they're just reacting to fans who are saying, hey, but what about this, and what about this, and what about this, and don't you understand this? And some of the responses that Rian Johnson has given to criticisms and questions about the movie, some of them I was like, yeah, no, well, that's obvious. We already knew that. But apparently other people didn't, whatever. And others are like just downright strange and like don't really need further explanation. But it's to the point, in my opinion, like the Star Wars news cycle with The Last Jedi, the response cycle, I should say, is to the point that the argument that people don't need to read books to understand everything that's going on in the movie, that they don't need to read add-on material, doesn't make any sense anymore. Because to completely understand everything that's going on in The Last Jedi, apparently, if I am to gauge by the Star Wars news by Rian Johnson, all the horse shit he's been putting out there, no offense to Rian Johnson, okay, it's an entire book of trying to explain all this minutia that's happening in The Last Jedi, which some of the questions are valid. Some of them are, I think, wait a minute, isn't that obvious? But some of them are, yeah, okay, what's going on there? Blah, blah, blah. So you might as well like have shit be in the books. And then because Rian Johnson did this himself, he was pointing to, so like one of the big ones was that, or one of the big complaints was, whoa, what's this, a telepresence force ability that suddenly Luke Skywalker has, and that he, spoiler alerts, folks, but I assume if you're listening to the Star Wars update, you've seen The Last Jedi. What's with this telepresence thing where he can appear, hundreds of thousands of light years away, whatever, from where he was on Octu. And he says, well, but there was this guidebook that was written a few years ago, and yeah, it's Legends. It's from before, Disney bought out Lucasfilm. But in there, they talk about how Jedi can do this, how they can transmit themselves and like interact and do all this other stuff. Not teleport, but like transmit their, kind of their physical form, more or less, which is exactly what Luke did in The Last Jedi. And he says, see, it's like, I didn't come up with this. You're telling me I'm coming up with these new force powers. They have no precedent, but there it is. So like, and that's considered like a valid thing to do. So then fucking already put the big stuff, put the big reveals, put important information and everything inside of all of these, not the novelizations to movies, but in all the extraneous books. Put stuff that matters in these Journey to the Last Jedi or Journey to the Force Awakens or whatever. Because if you're just going to waste your time pointing at other books, and if you're, pointing at past books, or if you're going to be like explaining, well, it's actually because of this and it's reference to this and blah, blah, blah. If you're going to have to spend the following month of the release of any Star Wars movie explaining all that shit away, you might as well just write a book that has all those details in it. And I don't mean a novelization. I mean like lead up material and all that. Make that stuff sell. And then if people come at you and say, yeah, but Disney, I shouldn't have to read a book. It should be in the movie. Then Disney turn around and say, no, Star Wars is bigger than any film. You got to read the books. Have some guts, and say that and put that out there. I think it's crazy. Like really, I think it's really crazy. The amount of articles out there right now that come officially from Rian Johnson or Lucasfilm spending time explaining The Last Jedi just points at the fact that you might as well put this shit in books. Not in novels, not in movie novelizations. Like I said, you might as well put this shit in books, or comic books or something. And just that way you don't have to turn it into a news cycle. But then maybe that's part of it too, right? Is that this is all just part of the hype machine. This is all part of marketing. This is just, how you keep a movie relevant, how you keep a conversation going about what you put out there, etc. And, I could certainly believe that really at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. It's not actually because they even want to or even care about explaining shit or interacting with fans. Or like I said, explaining it to fans. So maybe that's what's going on there. I don't know. But I had to get that off my chest. I tweeted at Collider Jedi Council saying because they have to do so much explaining away, shouldn't they just put this in the books already? Because that and I've complained about this with just about every Star Wars novel, is that you don't get any kind of like galaxy-wide or universe-wide important information until the last chapter of the book, and even then it's just like a morsel. It's not much. It's just this little something that you get most of the time. The book like Tarkin by James Luceno, that's an exception because in Tarkin, you find out about, there's so much you find out about the Emperor. You find out that there's a Sith temple under the Jedi temple, which was kind of poisoning the Jedi potentially. You find out why the Emperor is doing what he's doing, what his plans are, blah, blah, blah. And that's laced throughout the book. It's not like this last chapter reveal. And there's things like the ship, the Carrion Spike, which, reappears in the Poe Dameron comics. The book Tarkin, not my favorite book, but it's up there. That's doing it right, where you have so many things in it that have broad ramifications to every other aspect of the Star Wars saga, the Star Wars franchise, not just the movies, not just the comics, but it has just this massive, importance to it. So, yeah, anyway, I said it, got that off my chest. Let's move on to some other things. So let's talk about, I just mentioned comic books. Let's talk about comic books. Poe Dameron, right now they're on, there's a few, there's like 4 series here that I'm going to talk about. The Poe Dameron comic, right now they're doing all that business on Caeda Nemodia. And there's the Hunt for Lor San Tekka. This has been, Poe Dameron, the comic overall has been really enjoyable. It's been a lot of fun. I almost feel like I'm reading, not to the same level of seriousness, but I feel like I'm reading some like some 80s Marvel G.I. Joe. And that's a good thing, because that's one of the greatest comic book series ever. It almost feels like that. It's not to that level, but it's a lot of fun. The artistry is great. The story is cool, and we're leading up to The Force Awakens. I'm curious if the Poe Dameron comic is going to shift to post-Force Awakens once it gets to a certain issue, because, I mean, now that we're experiencing the rescue of Lor San Tekka, I assume that this is kind of coming to an end. And the last issue the issue that came out in January was issue 23. I think issue 25, if you wrap it up to where, Poe is on Jakku talking to Lor San Tekka, that'd be a nice, it's a nice round number. Even if you wanted to end the series, end it on issue 25, that has a good feel. But I wouldn't mind if they ended up taking Poe Dameron and they kept that comic going. And it ended up being something that was, well, actually it can't really be post Force Awakens, right? Because The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi take place literally right after each other. Okay, so you're not going to get that. And we're sure as fuck not going to get a comic that takes place between episode 8 and 9, or at least I don't imagine that we're going to. So, all right, my guess is they'll end Poe Dameron with issue 25. And go ahead. I don't know how well it's selling, but it's an enjoyable comic book nonetheless. So now as to and definitely, honestly, like if there's one series you want to be reading right now, that might be the most important. Now let's talk about the main Star Wars comic. The main ongoing series. Right now they're doing this saga, or this series, miniseries called Ashes of Jeddah, which is showing things that happen after Rogue One, after A New Hope and Rogue One, and it takes place on Jeddah, which is like half a planet now, and it's the story that they're laying out is actually really great, and I love Luke's reaction to finding out about like Jyn Erso and the events of Rogue One and everything, and like how terrible he feels. And like there's even a point in the last issue, which I think was issue 42 so far, that the arc is still going, but there's even a point where Luke says, he's like, I turned off my targeting computer. He said, if I knew how many people, everything that they laid on the line for me to take that shot and destroy the Death Star, he's like, I was arrogant. I was crazy. What the hell was I doing? And that was such awesome introspection. And really, like that conversation that Luke's having will stick with me when I watch New Hope again, because like the fact that he's going to feel a ton of remorse over what happens in Rogue One. Once again, it kind of hints at something I said over a year ago, is that Rogue One is, or, I said it before it came out and I said it after, could end up becoming just like one of the most, if not the most important, not best, but most important Star Wars movie out there. Because I think eventually we're going to find out more about Jeddah. We're going to experience Jeddah in its heyday. We're going to experience all the shit, in its heydays. And I think that Ashes of Jeddah comic might end up having a lot more meaning too, because there's some really weird shit going on in it and some interesting explorations of the Force, as it were. And yeah, now I'm not going to get into the artistry. I think I might have mentioned it in the last Star Wars update that the art in it, a lot of people are starting to complain about it, that they're lifting actual like screen shots, more or less, or photo stills from the Star Wars movies, and they are just like kind of drawing over them. And and I agree with what people are saying. It takes you out of the comic, because when you've watched these movies so often, and you see a look on Han Solo's face that is the exact same look he gave during a very important scene during A New Hope or something, it makes you think of A New Hope, and it takes you out of what is genuinely a great story with this Ashes of Jeddah story arc, which was the Sorkuren or whatever, that woman, and her race, or her people involved, where they're kind of strip mining Jeddah. I mean, it's a cool storyline and a lot of fun. Definitely one of the best, it's probably the best storyline that the Star Wars ongoing comic has done. So I'll be interested to see how that ends up shaping up. So hopefully they'll stay on this trend. I wouldn't mind if they would really get closer to The Empire Strikes Back in that comic book. I'm hopeful that they will, especially considering that, as I mentioned, the Forces of Destiny comics that came out throughout January like lead right up to The Empire Strikes Back. They're on Hoth, the whole thing, which I think is kind of cool. So now the next comic, which they've been doing these one-off comics that aren't part of the main Star Wars ongoing comic, and they're not like a full-on miniseries in itself, sort of like Darth Maul, Lando, or Mace Windu. And this month had one that tied in more directly with The Last Jedi, that being, it was The Last Jedi, The Storms of Crate. Now they'll also have, again, next Wednesday, and this is the one I was really wanting to read, which is the comic with the character DJ that was played by Benicio del Toro in The Last Jedi. But Storms of Crate, is it fits, and it's a little weird at the same time. It has to Crate, of course, is the planet on The Last Jedi where the Resistance makes its last stand, as it were, against the First Order and Kylo Ren's forces. And there's that base there that they said was once an old rebel base, which you found out about that back in September of 2017 in the book Leia, Princess of Alderaan, where it's mentioned that it was like a potential base and all this stuff. Now this comic, Storms of Crate, takes place like after A New Hope and before The Empire Strikes Back, because they're looking into Crate being a rebel base, I guess, again. And that's what's kind of weird is they didn't treat it like it was ever a rebel base before, but I was pretty sure in Leia, Princess of Alderaan, that it was some kind of base that Leia's parents, that Bail Organa and her mother had been to. Whatever, I could be remembering that kind of incorrectly, but regardless, Storms of Crate, and it was interesting because it allowed for you to see those, very famous speeders that were, that everybody remembers from The Last Jedi. You kind of got to see those a bit more. It gives you some kind of like back reference, but not a really important comic. I don't know. In fact, what's a little troublesome for me is you're getting to explore, they're taking time with a lot of these planets, including planets that get affected in the movies. Will they, I know Leia, Princess of Alderaan spent a lot of time on Alderaan. Can we get some more fucking visuals of Alderaan, please? We got a few screenshots or, a few seconds of it in, in episode 3 in Revenge of the Sith. But give us something, and you get little bits and pieces in the Princess Leia comic that they ran, the mini series that they ran for a little bit. Please just give us a little more. It's almost like they're afraid to show more of the planet. They'll describe it plenty in novelizations, but give us some visuals. Give me something I can use for my wallpaper, for fuck's sake, because I love that planet, even though I think Disney is dramatically changing what was otherwise previously, during the, I guess what we could call the Legends era of Star Wars, what was really laid out as being a pacifist planet, explicitly pacifist, where they didn't have armies, they didn't have weapons there, and all that stuff. That even just with the book which is a great book by Claudia Gray, one of the best Star Wars books ever done, Leia, Princess of Alderaan. Even in that though, there's weapons and whatever. Anyway. So Storms of Crate, whatever. It was serviceable. It gave you some reference to maybe it explains why Leia has any kind of familiarity with the place and why they would have known about it. It would have been cool if Amilyn Haldo was in the comic, because then she would have had a better understanding of what's going on with that base. But whatever, since she's the one with the plan. Well, Leia was originally the one with the plan to send everybody there, I assume. I don't know if that's me. Talk about something that needs to get explained. Was that Amilyn Haldo's idea to get everybody to Crate, or was that always Leia's idea? Or was that originally Leia's idea? I don't know that ever really gets explained, though I could be wrong about that. So anyway, that comic book, whatever, serviceable. Looking forward to the DJ comic more, though. The Darth Vader comic, that's been pretty cool. The second volume of it, that's still been really good. I'm curious to see where they're going to go next with that. I thought that the entire storyline with Jocasta Nu was, I actually thought that was really enjoyable. I thought it was really cool. And the last panel of that, what was it, issue 10, which rounded out that storyline. The last panel of it, where you see Luke finding the kind of the hidden little Jedi school that she created on some planet. You see Luke finding it at the end. I thought that was a nice touch, and that was really cool. I don't know when exactly he's going to end up finding that. I think it would be interesting if he found that between, say, either A New Hope and Empire, or more particularly between Empire and Return of the Jedi. And he finds that, and that's how he gets from the point of okay, I'm a really nervous Jedi in Empire Strikes Back. Return of the Jedi, I get the deal, and he even understands that Jedis will toss their labors, their lightsaber aside. I think that'd be cool if that gets explored. That could be really interesting. Some of the other fun stuff in that was like this. It's kind of this like rifle that Jocasta Nu gets out of the Jedi Temple, out of the library, and she could put a lightsaber in it, and then it turned this thing into like some kind of like supercharged gun that she could use. That was pretty wild. Like I would have never thought about that. But when she's packing it, I'm like, wow, okay. And then she starts going after the Inquisitor and Vader. And yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So that Darth Vader comic, that's another one that's actually, I think earlier I said maybe the best one to read is Poe Dameron. No, second thought, the best ongoing series right now is Darth Vader Volume 2. I think that there's a lot of really interesting and fun stuff going on there. But the real star to shine over the past couple months, or few months, would actually be Jedi of the Republic Mace Windu. That's the official title of it. Or I don't think it's Mace Windu Jedi of the Republic. I think it's maybe Jedi of the Republic Mace Windu, and maybe they're going to do more of this Jedi of the Republic series. This was a 5-issue miniseries. Probably the best miniseries next to Lando, which I still hold as being the best new Star Wars comic series that has come out, or at least miniseries. So there's a lot of fun that's had in like literally laugh out loud funny moments that I had when reading this comic book. Particularly like issue 3 and 4, there were some very funny moments. Kit Fisto's in it, not just Mace Windu. Well, first off, it's awesome that they are willing to do a prequel story. Okay, because the big concern that myself, who I am a prequelist, I enjoy the prequel movies for what they are. Myself, I was very worried that Disney was going to ignore the prequels like the plague. And it would appear they're not exactly doing that, which is great. By the way, also in Poe Dameron 23, there was an E-Wing. Just pointing that out there. That's cool. Okay, so back to Mace Windu. So I'm glad that they're doing stories that take place during the prequel era. I think there was a lot of interesting stuff to explore at that time. And Mace Windu is also a character that we could use a lot more of to delve more into his badassery and all that. And this 5-issue miniseries did that job. You definitely get a better understanding of that character. You even get to see him as a Padawan at one point in it. And he's always had a purple lightsaber. Okay, whatever. That's cool. I thought it was. I really enjoyed the series. Again, Kit Fisto's in it, who's always been one of my favorite Jedi. Who's just like this, kind of funny guy, and his. Like there's real laugh out loud moments that he does throughout this series. Like he breaks into this droid stronghold, and he's just like, "Oh, prepare yourselves. This is a raid." He says, "And I see you are well met," because there's like a ton of battle droids there. It was very funny. And there was another Risa was the character's name, a younger female Jedi Knight, and she's like this great engineer and whatever else and pilot. She was cool. Like she was really cool. And there's some funny moments where she to help take down one of these giant battle droids, she tosses her lightsaber to Mace Windu to finish the job. Tremendous Jedi action. Like the Jedi action we should have gotten much more of, other than on Geonosis, in the entirety of the prequel trilogy. Okay, there's awesome Jedi action in this, even with such a small team, and better Jedi action maybe even than the entirety of the Clone Wars. Like it's that cool, and like there's that much great teamwork and everything going on in it. I really liked it. But anyway, Risa's tosses her tosses her lightsaber to Mace Windu, and then he gives it, and then she has to use a blaster, and she's like, "I hate blasters," which is great, because Jedis are known for saying that. They're uncivilized, etc. And so he hands her lightsaber back, and she like has a name for it, like it was like, I don't know, not Matilda or something like that, but she's just like patting it, just like, "Oh," it's like, "Are you okay, Matilda?" She's just like patting her lightsaber, and it was funny. Like I read that, I was like, I laughed. I thought it was so cool. So yeah, very enjoyable series for all of that, all of those reasons. The other parts that made it enjoyable was there is a Jedi master in it. I think he's a master. I don't think he was just a knight. Proset Dibs is blind, kind of like Kanan is in Star Wars Rebels. And he gets into a screed, which I think is really important and says a lot about Mace Windu. So there's hints of why Mace Windu reacts as he does in Revenge of the Sith when he discovers what's going on with the Chancellor and he threatens the Chancellor. Like there's a lot of nice allusions, ALLUSIONS. There's a lot of nice allusions to that moment in Revenge of the Sith, which ends up being, the end of Mace Windu as far as we know. I thought that was a nice touch. So that kind of put it all together as well. But this Master Dibs, Master Dibs, it's funny. Anyway, Proset Dibs, he gets to a point where he finds out that, and I'm sure they're going to explore it, because like on this planet that they're on, there's these flowers that are some kind of impressive energy source. I know that all sounds very weird, but you have to read it to understand. It's actually pretty cool and gets into some pretty wild ecology and science, especially for Star Wars. But anyway, he thinks that the Jedi, like he's a Jedi, but he thinks that the Jedi are very confused. And he thinks that like, oh, you were here, you're just, because they're trying to stop the Separatists from doing whatever they're doing on this planet. And Proset Dibs thinks that he realizes, oh, wait a minute, this is all a power source. The Jedi are after this too. And it doesn't help that at the end of the comic book series, the Jedi say, yes, we're going to study this. We're going to try and figure this out. I'm sure it's going to play some kind of important part later on. Flowers having some kind of power, flower power. Wow. Anyway, but Proset Dibs, what was cool with that is he, like Barriss Offee and later, who's one of my favorite characters, she's awesome. And later, even Yoda himself, he starts to say, wait a minute, why are we going to war? Because it takes place during the Clone Wars. This is obviously after Episode 2 and before Episode 3. And he's like, this is not the Jedi way. We don't go to war. We don't do this. Like this is against our code. This is against what we do. And eventually he gets to the point where he gets so fed up with it, he literally clocks Mace Windu. And they have a lightsaber duel. And the presentation through this entire 5-issue miniseries was very cinematic. Like it was cool. Like they're like Proset and Mace are fighting on this planet like while it's raining, and the artistry is very well done. It delivers. Like this is a really cool comic book. Which, with having Samuel L. Jackson as kind of your base art, it damn well better be, So I was very pleased with that. And I was very pleased that there was someone else, another Jedi, that comes out and says, you guys are wrong. Like we shouldn't be generals. We shouldn't be involved in the Clone Wars. This is, we're way overstepping our bounds. This is a problem, which is exactly what Barriss Offee would go through in the Clone Wars, TV series, where, I started this hashtag, Barriss Offee was right. Not that I agree with her like violent reaction, because she becomes, effectively a terrorist, and engaging in bombings and all this other stuff to try and get the Jedi out of the war. But she was, in the abstract, like her point that the Jedi were being corrupted by the dark side and everything, and that they shouldn't be in this war. Barriss Offee was right about that. And Yoda in Star Wars Rebels, when we get to, was that in season 3? I think it was in season 3 when, or maybe it was season 2. Anyway, whenever Ezra has the vision of Yoda, Yoda says that. He says, how the Jedi, the methods that he effectively says that the means or the ends don't justify the means. Like the Jedi, how they fight is just as important what they're fighting for. And he gives this whole screed saying that we were wrong. We should have never, or, he makes this whole, Yoda makes the entire point. We were wrong. We were corrupted by the dark side. We should not have been fighting that war and all that. And here's another guy who, and he gets punished. And then that's the other crazy thing too, is he says that he's just going to walk away, and Mace Windu threatens this guy, Master Dibs, and says, if you walk away, I'm going to hunt you. And it's like, whoa. You mean a Jedi just can't leave? Like, what the fuck? So it does a great job while at the same time giving you very cool Jedi moments okay, and giving you a great look at, you get more great Kit Fisto action. Ki-Adi-Mundi's, talks in it and everything, and there's great references to Plo Koon and how great a pilot he is and everything. I mean, it's just a beautiful fest of love for the prequels, which I thought was great. So you get all that, but then at the same time, it really brings up the real problems. Why are the Jedi fighting in a war? In fact, that's something that honestly Rey is going to have to answer for as well. It's almost a good thing that, in my opinion, that in The Last Jedi, that Luke kind of runs off and doesn't get involved in the Resistance versus the First Order originally, because the Jedi shouldn't be fighting in a war. So I thought that was that comic had so much going for it and had so much extra commentary, not necessarily anything new, but it bolstered a lot of points, and the action in it alone was great. That was really solid stuff. Another thing though that this brought on, because kind of the main villain in it is this droid bounty hunter kind of character. They ever since Disney bought Lucasfilm, they are pushing really hard that droids are much more than just programming. They're pushing really hard that these are even the battle droids, even your stock battle droids are saying, oh, well, this person, he's mean to us. He's meaner than you were, General Grievous, and all this shit. Right. Not that kind of thing didn't necessarily happen in the Clone Wars, but they are pushing really hard that droids are people, and that they have agency and things like this. And it's a little odd just how much they're pushing for that. I don't know if that's ever going to take some kind of shape. But they have huge ethical problems if these things are manufactured. I don't know. There's a story to be told there. Maybe one day they'll tell it. We'll see. But yeah, the Mace Windu comic, I definitely recommend that one. One of the, again, next to Lando, it's probably the best miniseries that has come out. The other miniseries I'll review very quickly is the Darth Maul miniseries, which I don't think I've reviewed yet. That miniseries is weird because there was entire months between releases, and it was only 6 issues. But that one, the Darth Maul comic, I actually love Darth Maul as a character personally. And I think that comic delivered on giving you some more great Darth Maul badass action. In fact, it's kind of cool because he's trying to kind of tempt and corrupt a Padawan, a female Padawan, and there was explorations of, first off, it hints at that really Maul was already thinking of striking out on his own, and so can explain more of how he's so capable of striking out on his own, after episode 1 and when he finally comes back in the Clone Wars and all that. So you get a lot of that. You get some nice background on how that's a little more believable. But the action in it's really cool. Cad Bane's in it, which that's a nice touch as well. So once again, it's more of that prequel love that I think is really important, and more fleshing out of these characters that we felt, I think, as Star Wars fans, or at least ones that enjoyed those movies, that we felt were really badass, like Mace Windu. But then you never really got to totally explain why. And this was another attempt at that. So both of these miniseries I thought were really solid. I very much enjoyed the Darth Maul one as well. Not as much as the Mace Windu series. That was shockingly good. I was surprised at how enjoyable that was. Again, I was literally laughing while reading a comic, and that doesn't always happen. There's some series that I read where that happens. But it really happened there. So that was cool. So good stuff happening in the Star Wars comics overall. Even, like I said, the Ashes of Jeddah artwork aside, the Ashes of Jeddah is a really cool storyline happening there. The Poe Dameron comic is solid. The Dr. Aphra comic, we didn't get another entry, but I love that comic. I love it. The lesbian action in it is tremendous. And just not just the action, but just the fact that it's getting exposure, I think is really wonderful. So, okay, let's move on from all that. I guess we'll wrap it up with our last subject. And this is one that might surprise you. And that is, of course, porn parodies happen for every major movie event, right? And sometimes they're better than the actual movie. Okay, so for The Last Jedi, there was a porn parody, and it was Star Wars: The Last Temptation. The plot is surprisingly somewhat similar somewhat, just somewhat. And like you get kind of that telepresence, or that what do they call it? Force time? Is that what they call it now? Where how Rey and Kylo can just like suddenly communicate with each other across vast distances and everything. I think that's the nickname they're coming up with it now, is Force time. I think you get some of that stuff and everything. I watched this, and I was actually, believe it or not, I was going to talk about this because I watched it the Friday after after I saw, which would have been the 17th, or whenever the day that The Last Jedi came out, the Thursday that The Last Jedi originally first premiered, the day after I watched Star Wars: The Last Temptation. And I was going to say I didn't have time. I didn't get to it on the episode, the Sovereign Tech Prime episode where I reviewed The Last Jedi, but I was going to review the Last Temptation, and I was going to say I think this is a better film. And I'm only half kidding. And I mean, it's not, obviously the effects are kind of shit. Like the Resistance base is, just some alleyway. I don't know. Like there's so much of it. The effects are really nothing. There's some interesting little lightsaber stuff that goes on, but other than that, there's really not a whole lot to speak of. But it has a lot of what we might have actually wanted out of The Last Jedi, like the Knights of Ren are in it. Of course, they're in a gangbang, but they're in it. There is what I really wanted out of The Last Jedi, which was I wanted Rey to go to the dark side, and which they were hinting at in the trailer. It's not like that was it was an independent thought. I always want women to go to the dark side in Star Wars media, but it's not like it was a crazy idea, because again, they were hinting at it in the fucking trailer alone. But that process very much happens in this film, and it's fairly hot, aside from the usual like porn trappings and everything, which are kind of bullshit. But just in the abstract ideas going on, I really enjoyed. I thought were cool. And Finn's in it, and he gets his business on and whatever. But the best part of it is where, like, even the tagline for the movie is, in order to complete her Jedi training, Rey must master her lust, and not just for power. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's the exact kind of story I would write. And yeah, I thought it was pretty great. And obviously the character of Rey in it, played by Adriana Chechik, she looks fantastic and does there's a lot of attempts at corruption, with Kylo, with the Knights of Ren, and oh yeah, there's a full orgy scene, the whole thing. All that different stuff going on. Of course, it ends, spoiler alert, if you need a spoiler for a porn. Spoiler alert, everything turns out fine in the end. But like even Luke kind of gets some action on and everything. I mean, there's so many things that I think a lot of people, at least that I talked to, that wanted to happen in The Last Jedi actually happened in The Last Temptation, in the porn version of the film. So in some ways it's a better movie, I think, just based upon what I wanted to happen in it. And of course the sex doesn't hurt either. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised at, the effects in this are again, for the most part, practically nil. Some of the sets are nice. Like the Bridge of the Falcon is actually well done. Some of the other stuff, yeah, like that, and that kind of takes you out of it. But overall, I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was a very fun, porn parody film. It was great to see the Knights of Ren. It was great. And this is the storyline that I've wanted to happen like so many times. Like I want to see that kind of like sexual seduction into the dark side. I've been writing for over a year, and a lot of people know about this. I mean, because I announced it, because I want to like bring on a big cast, but I have other projects. Obviously, I have to finish first. I've wanted to do a Star Wars erotic audio drama. I've been writing one for over a year, and I already have like the basic what they call a story treatment. I had that done a year ago. But everything else. Yeah, I mean that's going to be a major part of it, where there is this seduction, sexual seduction into the dark side, and I think that's a very sexy concept. I think that's something that needs to happen. I think dark side women is such an untapped part of at least Disney's canon. It was a little more part of Legends, but even then, not so much. In fact, probably the hottest, I'll tell you something. So, obviously, Princess Leia, I love her, okay? I remember, like, there were people that were making, like, kind of what would be, well, for Star Wars, it would be Infinities, right? Wasn't Star Wars Infinities the comic book series that covered, like, alternative potential storylines that could have happened, like if the Death Star didn't get destroyed, what would happen, all that. And they did one for each movie. They never did Infinities for the prequel trilogy, which I think would have been awesome. I would have loved to have seen Padme join Anakin, and then they go kill Palpatine. They go off him, and they end up, creating their own galactic empire. And there was, like, people made various art and even some mock-up toys for a dark Padme, which I thought was incredibly sexy. And there's a lot of artwork out there for that. That was cool, or hot, I guess I should say more particularly. But my favorite Star Wars fan film of all time, still to this day, and in my opinion, it still holds up very well. It's not a full-on, it doesn't have a movie maker budget or anything, or Hollywood budget, but the story's great. Everything that's going on is great. And I don't really see any reason that, I always keep it in my head canon, but it's Star Wars Broken Allegiance. I've talked about this before. And Broken Allegiance, in that, you have two characters, Rowan and Callus, and Callus is a woman, and she is, like, they both wear, like, these all black outfits. They're being trained by Darth Vader to, kind of like Inquisitors or like Dark Jedi, something like that, right? And like Callus, they got this Australian gal to play her. The whole production was Australian, but they got this gal to play her, and she looked fantastic. And look, in the late 90s, like, that was having another female character besides Mara Jade and Princess Leia, and this is before the prequels, having that in Star Wars, like, yeah, of course, that character of Callus, she sticks with me, because that was, just it was a cool drink of water in the desert. It's like, oh, thank you. Finally, another fucking woman character. It's about time, and this is one of the things that Disney's gotten right, because they have gone out of their way to, by orders of magnitude, increase the amount of major female characters in Star Wars. And I think that that's important to do. Look, it doesn't have to be because feminism. It doesn't have to be because any of this stuff. Like, for fuck's sake, is it okay to have more women characters? Is it okay if I don't want to read a bunch of dudes, all the time? So I thought that was really nice. I thought that was a nice touch. And anyway, it was great to have that character. And like, I thought that was, I thought it was hot. And I still think she's like one of the hottest characters, for a multitude of reasons, not just physically, but like also kind of her story. In fact, like, she's pregnant in it. Like that's one of the things you find out, is that, her and Rowan, like, they're having a baby. I don't know. There's so much going for that. And like, Rowan's a badass dude too. He can use force lightning and everything. And it's right there in the fan film. It's so slick. Man, I love that. And so, yeah, like, could we please get some more? And obviously they're having a kid. They had sex. Okay. So that's what's kind of cool, is that, like, that seduction and sexuality's got to be a part of the dark side. And so to get that explored, either, in a fan film like that, of course, I want to explore it in my own work. And then, even just to have a porn that, yeah, it's a parody. Obviously it's not canon, blah, blah, blah. Never will be. No shit. Okay. Stating the obvious. But it was fun to see it. It was cool. And that's really, like, I don't know. I so wanted Rey to actually go to the dark side, both in this movie. I wish she would have stayed in it, like, because why not? You're already making a parody of it, so go all the way and give it a different ending and have Rey, like, off Kylo and have her take over the First Order or something like that. That'd be awesome. But whatever, it was still enjoyable. So yeah, check out that movie if you want. Not the greatest porn ever made, and certainly not the greatest Star Wars movie ever made, but in some ways, I think it's better than The Last Jedi. in some way, I'm dead serious. In some ways, I really think it's better than The Last Jedi. And you got some delivery. You got to see the Knights of Ren. You got, I mean, they get, you know, the directors or the director of that, of all names, Dick Bush, if that's your real name. Really, that's the name of the director, though. But Dick Bush gave us more than Ryan Johnson did. It's just Ryan Johnson, you know, Johnson, yeah. Okay, so I think that's it for this month of January. The February Star Wars update, I actually have something special. I have something special planned, and actually it'll be hopefully something special going from that month onward. As far as these goes, again, we only do once a month, and I don't imagine it becoming much more than that. Lost a lot of patrons this month, and I don't know if it's because you're not getting a lot of tech content. Look, if there's stuff you want, okay, all you have to, you know, if there's content that you want on Patreon that you want me to talk about, you know what you got to do. All you do, ask me the question, and it'll end up in a Q&A. Or I've had people ask me like about setting up secure nodes for Zencash. Yeah, absolutely. I'll do a whole episode about it. You know, that's no problem. I'll talk about it. Ask me. Don't just leave. Fucking ask me what, you know, let me know what you want out of Patreon, okay? Because, I mean, you're paying for it, and I'm willing, you know, to talk about what you, I mean, that's the whole point of Patreon, was to create content that you wanted me to talk about, okay? And that's why there was the Q&A episode that goes, you know, usually about an hour a week. Ask me anything, and, you know, and I'll talk about it. You want me to talk about, I don't know, you want me to how to set up PGP properly or something like that? I mean, whatever you want me, just ask, okay? And you know, you don't have to leave. I mean, that's fine if people, you know, and there's a lot of reasons why people stop being patrons, and that's fine. Okay. But I'm just saying, if it's because you don't like the content, you have ultimate control of what comes out on Patreon. So just ask me if there's something you want me to talk about, because I can talk about a whole hell of a lot. So I don't know if people flipped out because of the Metropolis episode I did. That was one that was by request. So whatever. I don't know. But these are fun. I always enjoy talking Star Wars. This is one that, I mean, yes, people had requested. In fact, like the Star Wars questions became so popular for the weekly Q&A. That's why I decided to once a month do a Star Wars update from then on, because that way those questions weren't taking up time from other questions. See, I'm giving you the content you want. So anyway, there we have it. That's our Star Wars update, and we've from here on out, the Star Wars update I think might end up being a lot more fun. I'm really excited about what's in store here. So that's it. I will see you on the other side. More content coming out. Yes, even in these last few days of January. Woo!